We are back in the State News boardroom for our second installment of our breakdown of the college football playoff rankings. I'm Geoff Preston.
I'm Bondy.
Now, I don't think that we jinxed the Spartans last week when we started this series, and they, as you probably know, lost 49-37. We didn't miss any tackles, but we are still back because the college football rankings still do have a pretty big impact on MSU. Obviously, a two-loss Big Ten team, probably out of the running for the top four, but there's some pretty enticing bowl games on the match, on the slate potentially for MSU. Comes in at number 12. We'll do a quick rundown of the top four. We have Mississippi State at number 1, no surprise there, they're still undefeated. Oregon jumped Florida State despite Oregon having one loss. Florida State fans got really mad on Twitter. It's just who gets to wear the home jersey for a semifinal game, so not that big of a deal in my opinion, but who knows. Yeah. TCU snuck in at number 4, and Alabama rounded out the top 5 at 5. Michigan State's number 12, as I mentioned. And they're looking at some pretty enticing bowl games that they can maybe win out and sneak into that top 10 and could potentially get in that large bowl berth. There's some pretty historic and important bowl games.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the rankings still, like you already pointed out, mean a lot when it comes down to the playoff teams. But outside of that, those rankings also play a big role on where Michigan State could potentially end up in an at-large kind of BCS-like bowl game. I guess they're calling them the selection committee bowl picks. And those are the Peach Bowl, the Cotton Bowl, the Orange Bowl, and the Fiesta. So similar to last year, how you had the national championship game and the 4 other kind of BCS-like bowl games. Those are like the big 4 where Michigan State, if they could win, stay at number 12, win out, that mean wins over Rutgers, Maryland's Penn, then Rutgers and Penn State. They would finish 10-2 and most likely finish in that top 10. Mm-hmm. At that point, you really have a good chance of them being selected for one of those at-large type games, and really have a chance to play in one of, like you said, a very prestigious bowl game.
Yeah, and you take a look at these bowl games, and they're very prestigious, but it doesn't seem like it'd be that hard for MSU to really sneak in. And a lot of the projections that I noted that you looked at yesterday, they're kind of split. They're split between this tier of obviously a lot of people are talking about the Peach Bowl or the Cotton Bowl. For some reason, the Fiesta and the Orange Bowl haven't been mentioned as much. Right. But there's also about half of the people who project these things are projecting MSU to go to the Citrus Bowl, formerly known as the Capital One Bowl, or the Outback Bowl. So it's kind of split, but either way, I mean, we're not trying to sugarcoat a season where the expectation was not to go to the Citrus Bowl, but those are also 2 pretty good bowl games as well.
They are. I mean, it's a New Year's Day bowl game. Antonio said earlier this week that that's still always been a goal of Michigan State. And obviously, this year they're shooting for higher up after what they achieved last year, the Rose Bowl and expectations. But you still can't be upset. I personally believe with the 10-2 season and playing a New Year's Day bowl game, and those are still obviously very much alive. I don't see how they couldn't end up at the Outback Bowl at the worst. I mean, they would truly have to lose maybe all final 3 games and not end up on some form of New Year's Day bowl game. And that won't happen. I mean, if they come ready to play this week, that won't be an issue. And then you should be excited. I mean, the opportunity to play potentially in Auburn or Baylor or TCU, whoever does end up in the playoffs, and maybe the Peach Bowl or the Cotton or something like that. That's a big game. That's a big game, and I don't think you can be upset about that. Spartan fans, I believe, would be excited about it. I personally would be excited to watch a game like that, and I think that players would be excited to play a game like that. So obviously, you're not looking at a national championship anymore, but to say the season's lost, I think, is being a little irrational.
Interesting thing about that, a lot of the talk about the Big Ten being really weak. MSU did this in 2012 when they beat the SEC team Georgia in the Outback Bowl. It's an opportunity to do a similar thing. I would be very curious, put MSU. A lot of the MSU fans have been talking about how they could potentially, maybe before the Ohio State loss, but be just as good in an SEC team or just as deserving of a top 4 bid. Put them up against Auburn, and we'll see. So we will sign off for this week. We will be back later in the week to preview the game against Maryland out in College Park. First time since 1944 that MSU will be heading out to Maryland to play Maryland. We are here from the State News boardroom. I'm Geoff Preston.
I'm Bondy.
We will see you later in the week to preview the game against the Terrapins.